A federal court just witnessed one of the most furious courtroom speeches in recent memory. Donald Trump was caught in the act of directly defying a clear order from the court. And what makes this moment even more striking is that he wasn't just testing the boundaries or skirting the rules. He was doing exactly what the judge had explicitly told him not to do, with irrefutable evidence that even his own lawyers couldn't spin. According to multiple news outlets, the judge's voice inside the courtroom rose to a level rarely heard from the bench, expressing flagrant disdain and emphasizing the disrespect shown toward the court's authority. As Trump sat and listened, the scene was remarkable. This isn't just a minor legal hiccup or a disagreement over procedure. The judge, speaking publicly, is calling out a defendant for intentionally violating a court order. And when federal judges use language like this, it signals something significant. It's almost surreal to watch a former president being reprimanded so openly for misconduct. The judge described it as an attack on the justice system itself. Here's the background. This case has been developing for months, with Trump facing allegations regarding his handling of classified materials after leaving office. The presiding judge, appointed to the federal bench in 2019 with bipartisan support, has carefully balanced offering Trump all the courtesies afforded to any defendant while maintaining control of the courtroom. Early in the case, she issued a protective order explicitly barring Trump from publicly discussing certain evidence, witnesses, or information that could influence the jury or put others at risk. Politico reports that the December 8th order left no room for confusion. It clearly spelled out what Trump could and could not say, and his lawyers agreed to those boundaries. They had known the limits for weeks. Yet, while Trump technically complied in some ways, he pushed the rules too far with posts on Truth Social. The situation came to a head on December 10th when Trump sent a flurry of messages. These didn't just test the limits, they obliterated them. CNN's legal analysts note that a private witness named by Team Trump revealed sealed evidence in court-related posts, immediately flagged by prosecutors as direct violations of the protective order. Let's be honest, breaking a court order is not the same as ignoring a campaign promise or bending political norms. This is serious business. Typical defendants can be jailed immediately for such violations, and judges treat them with utmost seriousness because if court orders can be flouted casually, the legal system itself collapses. Here's where it gets really dramatic. CBS News reporters present in the courtroom say the hearing began quietly. Lawyers laid out their arguments, presenting a motion that Trump had violated the protective order. Screenshots of the Truth Social posts were displayed with timestamps showing exactly when they were published. Trump's lawyers argued that the posts were generic commentary, not targeted offenses, and claimed Trump had First Amendment rights to publicly defend himself. The judge listened, asked clarifying questions, and appeared to follow a methodical plan, reviewing the arguments carefully. Then came the moment that changed everything. NBC News reporters described the scene. The judge pulled up the official protective order on the courthouse screen and began reading it aloud, line by line, highlighting the specific restrictions on Trump's posts. It was unmistakable. The order explicitly prohibited naming witnesses and discussing sealed materials. Yet Trump's posts called a witness by their full name and mentioned certain confidential documents. The courtroom fell utterly silent. When Trump's lead lawyer tried to speak, the judge raised her hand, signaling she was not finished. What happened next, MSNBC reports, was remarkable. The judge turned directly to Trump and said, "Mr. Trump, do you understand this? When a court issues an order, it is not a suggestion. It is not something for your lawyers to interpret creatively. You must follow it. It is legally binding. You are compelled to comply." Several reporters noted an edge in her voice that hadn't been there before. She continued, "Your December 10th post is a clear, deliberate, and blatant violation of this court's protective order. The proof is undeniable. This is not open to debate. You did exactly what this court explicitly told you not to do." Trump remained silent. Observers saw him sit up straight, his cheeks flushed, while his lawyers frantically passed him notes, trying to prevent any reaction. The moment of reckoning came when the judge addressed consequences. She said she was imposing a fine of $250,000 for each violation, 5 posts in total, but she didn't stop there. The judge warned that if Trump violated the protective order again, she would not hesitate to jail someone. According to courtroom lawyers, this was unprecedented. A federal judge putting a former president on clear notice that continued defiance could lead to imprisonment. She emphasized that she had given Trump every possible benefit of the doubt, crafted the protective order with his position in mind, and been patient with behavior that pushed boundaries. Yet she stated plainly that she had no choice. Real consequences were necessary to preserve the integrity of the court proceedings. This testimony sent shockwaves through the courtroom. It wasn't just about fines or minor penalties. A federal judge was essentially signaling that Trump's conduct, so blatant, so openly disrespectful of the court's authority, could now warrant incarceration for any future violations. This isn't the first time Trump has clashed with judges over what he can publicly say about ongoing cases. Remember how he targeted Judge Juan Merchan during the New York trial, posting about the judge's daughter, claiming bias, and repeatedly breaking gag orders. The court held him in contempt multiple times. He paid hefty fines, yet continued pushing boundaries, seemingly confident that no judge would actually jail him. The barrage continued throughout the trial, and while monetary penalties could hurt, they never imposed the kind of confinement that would have silenced any typical defendant immediately. Then came Judge Tanya Chutkan in the January 6th case, issuing a gag order after Trump attacked prosecutors and others on social media. His lawyers fought the order all the way up the appeals process. While some adjustments were made, the core restrictions remained, and Trump still violated them. This forced the judge to hold hearings and impose additional consequences. The pattern was unmistakable. Trump would test every boundary, break the rules when he thought he could get away with it, and dare the courts to enforce real consequences. We also can't forget Judges Arthur and Gorin in the New York civil fraud trial, who repeatedly found Trump in violation for targeting court staff, particularly the judge's assistant. Trump posted her photo on social media with false claims about her political affiliations, triggering immediate penalties and strict instructions to stay silent. Even after being punished, he skirted the edge of the rules again, showing a consistent pattern. The rules simply didn't apply to him the same way they did to everyone else. Even Judge Eileen Cannon, often seen as more sympathetic to Trump regarding the handling of secret documents, issued warnings about improper public statements. But her approach has been far more tolerant than other judges. Across all these cases, the pattern is unmistakable. Trump crosses the line, is told to stop, pays a fine, and then keeps pushing. Since incarceration has rarely been enforced, it seems his strategy, daring judges to hold him accountable, may have finally met a judge prepared to follow through. The pattern is clear. Trump treats court orders as suggestions, assuming his status shields him from serious consequences, only halting when penalties truly sting. So what exactly did the judge say that made this courtroom moment so explosive? Reports from multiple news organizations paint a vivid picture. The judge began by methodically laying out the facts, the protective order, the post in question, and the undeniable violation. Then her tone shifted. The Washington Post quotes her, "This court will not be a rubber stamp for the defendant's whims. When this court issues an order, it expects not creative interpretation, but obedience, not testing the limits, but full compliance." Her words marked a clear break from past tolerance, signaling that the patience had run out and that serious consequences were now on the table. That language is crucial because it directly calls out the pattern of behavior Trump has shown across multiple cases. But the judge didn't stop there. Reports say that Trump's violations weren't just rule-breaking. They put witnesses at risk and threatened the integrity of the trial itself. The judge noted that the witness Trump had named had already received threats after being listed in court documents. And by amplifying that identifying information on social media to millions of followers, Trump demonstrated a blatant disregard for the person's safety and well-being. CNN spoke with legal experts who stress that this framing elevates the offense far beyond a technical violation. It's no longer just a clash between Trump's rights and the court's authority. It's a matter of witness safety and obstructing justice. This leaves Trump's lawyers in a nearly impossible position. On one hand, they must try to protect their client, which history shows is extremely difficult. Trump has repeatedly ignored their guidance, posted content they explicitly warned him against, and disrupted carefully laid legal strategies with his own commentary. Every one of his lawyers has faced the same challenge. How do you defend someone who actively works against their own defense? On the other hand, they must argue on appeal that the contempt finding and penalties were too harsh. That's a steep uphill battle when the violations are so well documented. Trump's posts are stored, time-stamped, and undeniable. The protective order's language is crystal clear. There's no gray area for appellate courts to exploit, no argument that the judge overstepped. Every legal option hinges on Trump obeying the court, and based on his track record, that seems unlikely. His lawyers are trapped. They can try to control a client who resists orders and may lash out when restrained, or they can continue reacting to the chaos he creates, filing emergency motions and scrambling to salvage legal strategies after the fact. There is no easy solution. And now, with the judge's explicit threat of incarceration, the stakes are higher than ever, both politically and legally, for everyone involved. Analysts are calling this ruling a potential tipping point in how the legal system handles Trump's courtroom behavior. Andrew Weissman, a former FBI general counsel and longtime prosecutor, told MSNBC that this is the first time a judge has clearly signaled to Trump that jail is a real possibility if he continues to defy court orders. Until now, Trump appeared to act under the assumption that his former presidency would shield him from the harshest consequences. This judge, Weissman noted, made it clear that assumption is incorrect. Even a university law professor who has often supported Trump's legal positions told Fox News that the judge's decision was legally sound and that Trump's lawyers should be concerned. The rules that were broken were so obvious that mounting an appeal would be extremely difficult. The professor emphasized that Trump must understand that continued defiance could land him in jail during the trial. When someone who generally defends Trump's legal arguments confirms that the judge was correct, it underscores just how solid the legal basis is for her actions. So what does this all signify? It's more than a single finding of contempt or a $250,000 fine. The implications stretch across Trump's legal standing, political strategy, and personal behavior. First, the immediate effect on the trial is clear. Trump now knows that jail time, not just financial penalties, is a realistic consequence. This creates real pressure for him to comply. His lawyers are undoubtedly holding emergency meetings to figure out how to prevent him from posting anything that could trigger the judge's warning. But following the rules requires self-control, something Trump has struggled with in the past. He must resist responding impulsively to developments, attacking witnesses, or sharing information he believes could help his case. And that will be a challenge against his own instincts. Second, the ruling gives prosecutors significantly more leverage. Whenever Trump's lawyers argue that he is being treated unfairly or that the rules are overly strict, this contempt finding can be cited as proof that he cannot be trusted to respect legal limits. It weakens the defense's arguments and adds a documented pattern of infractions to the record, one that will follow him through every subsequent hearing. Third, the decision carries immediate political consequences. Trump's long-standing narrative has been that he is a victim of a rigged system, that the cases against him are politically motivated, and that judges are biased. But when a judge finds him in contempt for blatantly breaking clear court orders and threatens jail, that narrative becomes far harder to sell beyond his most loyal base. Moderate voters, independents, and even some Republicans who may have given him the benefit of the doubt now see documented proof that he deliberately violated the rules. Looking ahead, this verdict sets a precedent other judges can cite. Those presiding over Trump-related cases now have a clear example of a federal judge imposing serious penalties and threats of incarceration for rule breaking. It makes it easier for them to do the same, knowing they have strong legal grounding to follow this example. Beyond Trump himself, the The ruling is about the broader question of whether the legal system can maintain its authority when defendants have massive political platforms and devoted followings. If Trump could repeatedly break court rules without consequences, it would send a dangerous message that judges cannot enforce orders against high-profile defendants. This decision pushes back against that notion, reinforcing that court orders carry real weight, regardless of who the defendant is. This entire situation is creating waves of stress across both the legal and political worlds. Politico reports that those closest to Trump are divided on how to respond. Some advisors are urging full compliance, warning that going to jail would be politically damaging and make Trump appear weak or out of control. They advocate for a structured approach. Trump should stay silent about the case and focus solely on general political messaging. Other allies are taking the opposite stance, arguing that the judge's actions are an overreach and that Trump should fight back, even if it risks imprisonment. Steve Bannon on his podcast called the decision an example of judicial tyranny and encouraged Trump to keep speaking out, claiming that political speech outweighs court orders. This faction believes that jail time could actually boost Trump politically, framing him as a martyr and energizing his base. Meanwhile, lawyers and observers from across the spectrum are watching closely, torn between fascination and concern. Some see the proceedings as the justice system functioning properly, holding a high-profile defendant accountable just like any other. Others worry about what could happen if Trump violates the order again and the judge enforces the threat of incarceration. Putting a former president behind bars would be extraordinary and could trigger a serious political crisis. The tension intensified hours after the hearing when Trump posted on Truth Social. While he did not technically break the protective order, his posts skirted the line, complaining about being silenced and punished by an unfair system. Analysts quickly pointed out that he was testing the boundaries again, seeing how far he could go without provoking another contempt citation. It's the same pattern that has repeatedly caused him legal trouble, and yet he seems unable to stop himself. This is about far more than a single contempt ruling. It's a question of whether our legal system can enforce its own rules when defendants control resources, influence, and massive platforms to defy them. If judges cannot make their orders stick, defendants could ignore protective orders with impunity, paying only fines that are trivial to them. Court authority would lose its meaning. This ruling sends a clear message. Defiance has consequences, and no one, regardless of their former position, is above the law. The bigger question is whether this marks a true turning point or just another fleeting moment in a pattern we've seen repeatedly. Will Trump now follow the protective order, knowing jail is a real possibility, or will he continue testing the limits, betting the judge won't enforce the consequences? Will other judges gain confidence to impose similar penalties? Here's the reality. A federal judge recently held Donald Trump in contempt of court for openly violating a protective order, ordered him to pay $250,000 in fines, and made it unmistakably clear that further violations could land him in jail. This wasn't a minor misstep or misunderstanding of the rules. It was a documented pattern of behavior demonstrating a belief that he is above the law, and the judge finally responded with real consequences. When a federal judge tells a former president that the next violation will mean jail, and the breach is so obvious even his lawyers cannot defend it, we have entered uncharted territory. If Trump continues to ignore responsibility and the threat of jail remains unenforced, it signals that some individuals are, in practice, above the rules everyone else must follow. Watch closely. Trump's next move will reveal whether the possibility of incarceration changes his behavior. The judge's response to any future violations will show whether the courts can assert their authority over even the most powerful defendants, and the political fallout will indicate whether accountability still matters in American democracy. The stakes have never been higher. Judicial authority has never been more directly challenged, and the consequences have never been more uncertain.